Now, today's session, hold on, skip on. Today's session is all, something wrong. Okay, strange. Okay, now today's session is a combination of leadership and creative marketing. Okay, now why did I say it's a combination is because if you look at a leader, I mean, if you look at any leader for that matter, most of the leaders are very good at two things. One is, execution of ideas in and itself at the core, and raising funds for that. But at the same time, they're very, very good at their marketing. And I think when you start to dig deeper into creative marketing, that's where people sort of struggle with. Now, you might ask me, why do I need to be very good at marketing in property business? To answer your question, if you're not good at marketing in property business, you're just not going to be able to raise funding. You need to be able to bring people into a room to be able to pitch either for your BRR projects, for your development projects, for your technology side of funding of your property, irrespective of which aspect you're working on in the property, you're still going to need external money, which is where you need marketing. Okay. And then creative marketing is where it's at. If you're just going to go and copy everyone else out there, and this is what tends to happen anyway, when you start a business and you want to do some marketing out there, you go out there and you copy other people and then you do your marketing, and that doesn't quite stand out because all you're doing is you're listening to other marketers or you're listening to other people, and you're not necessarily using as much creative marketing that will allow you to scale, so that will allow you to stand out from the rest of the crowd. But I'm actually going to share with you some of the principles of creative marketing, and that will allow you to dig much deeper into how you can structure the content of your marketing, that will allow you to stand out, really, really stand out. Okay. The first thing is, and this is something I learned a very, very long time ago. In fact, I learned it the hard way. It is better to be first than it is to be better. Now, you might have heard this, but how do you take this and apply it in your business? It is better to be first than it is to be better. Okay. Just because you have a very premium service or a premium product, it doesn't mean that you'll be able to sell it, because marketing is a battle of perception rather than the product quality. Okay. But you might ask me, how do I become the first in the market in anything? Okay. It's very, very easy sometimes. Now, if you look at PEN, for example, I'm actually just going to give you examples on myself. When I was starting PEN, I did so much research. I remember sitting one single day on laptop and I was searching for some keywords, and I went up to the 80th. Sorry, some noise. I went up to the 80th plus page just to check on some keywords and some competitors, right? Who I have, and I found none going as far as 80 pages of research. Okay. The keywords that I was searching on was social media, property social media, stuff like that. In fact, the main keyword that I was searching was property social media, and I found nothing. Now, there is one more company at this moment. Eventually, I'm actually going to explain that principle as well. But back then, 4 years ago, there was actually nothing called property social media platform. And that's when we started Property Entrepreneurs Network. I really struggled initially with the name because it was a really, really long name, propertyentrepreneursnetwork.com. But over a period of time, when I made it PEN, it started to stand out in and itself with the acronym. Okay. But why did I go for property social media as in the technology inclined platform or focused platform? Is because we were actually first in the category. Okay. It is better to be first in the category than to be better. Now, our platform is not necessarily the best. It's just got very, very basic social media features. But at the same time, we are the world's first property social media platform. And that allows us to stand out from the rest of the other networks in and itself. Sorry. Sorry, I've got a bad throat today. So it is better to be first than it is to be better. Now, you might ask me, how can I take this and apply it in my business? I normally tend to, when I observe businesses, like literally you put a business in front of me, and I can tell you within a few minutes of watching its activities and the way they're positioned in the market, if they're going to struggle or they're going to really be able to pull it off big time, or they will be able to scale. And that's because all it takes is just a few keywords on Google and the competition that you have. But how do you find that balance? I'm actually going to share further with you. Okay. The second in the category is the law of category. Okay. Now, if you look at any business in and itself, for example, if you go and buy something, let's say you buy Kellogg's, okay, and there's a certain kind of Kellogg's that you buy, and let's say you go on the shelf and they're not there. What do? You have a second preference, right? I'm actually going to take one person and speak with that person, so we are better, we have more clarity on this. Chetan, can I speak with you? Or maybe Sapphire. Not sure if you can hear me. Sapphire, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
So Sapphire,
Yeah,
let's say you.
Yeah,
okay, so let's do Chetan. Okay, Sapphire is very experienced. Chetan. So let's say you walk into a store and you want some cereals, right? Morning cereals, okay? And let's say the one you normally pick, it's not on the shelf. Do you have a second preference?
I mean, personally speaking, no.
No. Okay. So let's say you're buying something else. Let's say you're buying hand wash. Okay.
Yep.
And normally the one you pick, it's not on the shelf. You really need it. Do you have a second preference?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So normally, in most cases, not all, like you said, you didn't have a preference in the first one, but in the second one, you have a preference. So in most cases, people always have a second and a third preference. Okay.
Yep.
Now, let's say you are positioning your business in the market and there's a market leader. Normally, there is a positioning ladder in any product category. Okay. Your job is to find that space for yourself in the ladder. Okay. You could be number 1, number 2, or number 3, or even number 4 and 5, but nothing below 5. Normally, the number 1 would normally have more than half of the share, market share. The second one would have half of what the first one has. Statistically proven, all these are average stats. And the third one would normally have a very, very small percentage, normally 1/10 of the first in the category. So let's say if your product or service as a ladder, and you are there's a leader in the category, and then there's a second one. Are you able to position yourself as either the second or the third in the category if you can't find a category for yourself in the first one? Okay, that's a question you need to ask yourself. Can you create a category in and itself where you can position yourself either as a leader or the second in the category or the third in the category? That's the question you need to ask yourself. The more narrow you go sometimes, in fact, most of the times, the better it is, okay? It is equally paradoxical that sometimes you can cover the width and still be very, very profitable and stand out, okay? Like we are doing with PEN. I'm actually going very sort of the opposite direction of normal strategic way of doing things, but it's working well. In future, if it requires evolving and going more narrow, we will definitely do that as well. But it's for your understanding that you need to, it's almost like ladders in the category, that you need to be either the first, the second, or the third in the category and nothing below that. Anything below third or fourth, you're just not going to get enough market share to be able to scale in the first place. Okay, Chetan, are you clear on that? Okay, I'll give you an example on you. Let's say you run an accountancy practice.
Yes, Jack.
Let's say
Yes.
you are in, let's say you're in Middlesex. Okay, why don't you
Yeah.
do some research and say who are the accountants who are specifically focused on property business? Okay, accountancy
Yep.
in Middlesex for property businesses. Let's say you find, I don't know, let's 6 or 7 people, and now you go and find their strengths and you position yourself as something different from them. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, Jack. Yep.
Okay, all right, okay. So
Thank you,
that's
Jack.
your, so that's your law of category. Okay, set up a new category, you can be first in essence. So if if you are competing with the rest of the market, can you create a category that has not been covered, and then you could be potentially the first one or the second one? Maybe there's already one, but you are the second one in the category, and that will allow you to stand out really, really well. Okay, that's your law of category. The third in the list is the law of mind. Okay, if you're not making notes, don't worry, I'm actually going to share some notes with you after the call. These are the notes that I made long time ago, and I keep going back to these notes because they really, really help to become more creative with your marketing. The law of mind. Now, this is the one we use massively, which is, it is better to be first in the mind than to be in the marketplace. So let's say you're not first in the marketplace in your category. How can you be first in the mind of the consumer? The way I do it is by using WhatsApp really massively. Okay, I think many of you observe this. We were, in fact, the country's first property network that started using WhatsApp on the scale that we do. Okay, and that allowed us to stay on top of the mind of our consumers or our users, if I may say so. Okay, so the question you need to ask yourself is, how can you stay on top of your consumer's mind, be first in the mind of your consumer? Okay. I shared the fourth one earlier, that is the law of perception. Marketing and standing out is a lot. It's all about perception and not necessarily reality. It's not about how good your product or service is. I mean, I can tell you from my own personal experience, I used to always think back in the days, about 10 years ago, that it's the quality of my product that's going to allow me to attract more customers and clients. That is not the case. You could have the best product on the damn planet. You're just not going to be able to win the game. The game, the winning of this game is all about perception and not the actual reality. It's what people think about you rather than what actually it is. Unfortunately, I always use that word for this because people don't tend to see reality. What they see is what they see on the surface, which is a perception in essence. Okay, so marketing is all about perception and not necessarily reality. The law of focus is very, very important, which is where you own a word in prospect's mind. Okay, now if you look at Colgate, the toothpaste, people don't necessarily say toothpaste these days, they would say Colgate. Okay, morning Sati, they would say Colgate, or they say Dove, or they use words for things which, for example, Uber is a great example. People stopped using the word cabs and taxis. They started using the word Uber, which is basically mini cabs in essence. And they really own a strong word in people's mind by very, very strong execution. And that is a great place to be in. Can you use a word that would remain in someone's mind? For example, even PEN, I think it's becoming very synonymous in the country at the moment, where PN is all about property entrepreneurs network and connecting people through WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups and Telegram groups. It is becoming synonymous slowly over a period of time. So the law of focus is very, very important. So you need to come up with either a very creative name or some sort of acronym that will allow you to be able to own the word in the mind of the consumer. Very, very important. Okay. Just a normal word would not do. You do have to be creative in this respect. The law of exclusivity. Now, two companies cannot own the same word in prospects' minds. It's just not possible. Okay. People have Samsung as Android these days from phones. People have iOS as Apple, two different categories in and itself, but they own the word when it comes to real, sort of the luxury mobile phone space. So, if you look at UK market, for example, people walk into a mobile shop and if they want Android, they just straight away ask for a Samsung, or if they want iOS, they would straight away ask for an Apple phone. And the third category is not really getting any much more, they're barely getting any business. Okay. So owning a word in prospect's mind is very, very important. Okay. And the word of the exclusivity, the law of exclusivity. So it's almost like becoming Samsung is becoming exclusive. But the question you need to ask yourself is, how can you take that law of exclusivity and apply it to your business? We want to potentially get to a point within PEN where people start to trust us, where they already do, but we are not as big as yet, where people start to trust us when it comes to getting deals over the line. Okay. The law of ladder, which I shared with you earlier, which is very, very important. Always look at positioning as a ladder. And then within that, you need to first of all kind of find your own space, your own positioning. And from that positioning, you sort of start to look at the ladder of how many people are in that category. And then you find one step in the ladder for yourself, and that will massively help you. If you look at many ads of some large companies, if they are number 2 in the market, or if they're number 3 in the market, they would actually be very, very sort of straight upfront with it and say, we are number 2 in the market, but, or however, we are bringing this into the market, and we are sort of in some or the other way different from the leading in that space, if I may say so. So they are actually telling, okay, this is number 1 guy, we are number 2, but this is how we are different from number 1, which allows them to almost stand out and become number 1 in the category in and itself. So they're not really saying, oh, we are better than number 1. What they're saying is, we are different. This is how we are different from number 1 in the market. That's how you got to structure your marketing, and that's how you really stand out. The law of duality, very, very important. I was going to say that every market, every product at some point becomes a two-horse race. In our case, for example, on the technology front, there's another social media platform that has been launched. This has happened after we launched PEN. So now it's a two-way race and not just a one-way race. Or for that matter, we are not the only one in the market. There's another social media, property-focused social media platform, which has been launched after we launched. So we are first, they are second. It's becoming a two-way race. And that is normal in any product or service that you look at. Even if you're first in the market, you'd always have another one join you at some stage. You'd normally have another person join you at some later stage, and that it becomes a two-horse race in and itself. Another thing that I learned is, and this is something that I observe a lot, which is when people are starting a business and they find a gap in the market and they position themselves correctly, but then they look at the market, but there's a couple of competitors, but they are quite timid, or they're not as confident when they are sort of presenting their product or services to the market, is because they think they have a competitor. Okay. Now, if you observe me, we started PEN way later than some of the other networks that started, PIN and PPN and all that. But when you speak with me, when people are speaking with me, I am not timid. I'm not presenting myself as another PPN or PIN. I am presenting myself or the company as completely different. We are a social media platform. And at the back of that, we do deals, we do developments, and so on and so forth, and we do investments. So we present ourselves as different from them. So I'm not timid in any way at all. Just because you're number 2 or 3 or 4 in the market, you should not be timid. It's more about being able to look at the strengths of the existing competitors and saying, how can you be different from them, and then present it into the market as a different. It's almost like being more creative and coming up with features or benefits that will allow you to stand out from the existing competition or leadership in the market. Now, not just that any product will become a two-way race or two-horse race, any category eventually becomes a two-way. So it gets split. It's the law of division. If you look at Coca-Cola, there's Coke and there's Pepsi, and then there's many other categories that have been created around that. If you look at all these new drinks that are coming up, the energy drinks, which are taking market share from the existing Coca-Cola market. But there'll be loads of categories that will be created between that, and that you need to be aware and deal with your. So it's almost like you're structuring you're creating your marketing accordingly, allowing you to still keep your positioning very tight. That's very, very important when you're working towards your marketing. It's called the law of division. The law of perspective, which is when you start doing marketing, don't expect to be on top of your prospect's mind in a short period of time. It's a long-term game, and you got to keep. It's almost like being persistent over a period of time to be able to stand out when it comes to your marketing. Again, going back to PEN, I'm very, very compounded, very, very strategic about our marketing, and that has allowed us to scale the network massively. And that is because we understand and apply the law of perspective into the marketing. I'm actually going to share the notes of everything that I'm sharing with you today, because this is the journal that I wrote a long time ago. The law of line extension. How many people here are focused on one strategy and they think, okay, let me look at another strategy at the same time? That's a bad decision. Focus on one strategy at a time. You can look at different strategies at some later stage when you're fully successful with one strategy, but only look at different strategies or different line extensions when you are successful with the first one that you're working on. It's called the law of line extension. Eventually, if you look at businesses, many businesses actually fail because they start doing, they start creating other line extensions, which is other products and services, eventually diluting the profits of their main products and services, eventually leading to some companies actually going bankrupt due to dilution of products or services. It's called the law of line extension. The law of sacrifice. I'm actually going to ask a few people here. How many of you actually think that you can gain something new by not losing anything? Raise your hand if you think that you can gain something by not losing anything. Okay. Seti, you want to explain how?
Well, I'm driving at the moment, so I'll jump in. Hopefully, I won't get cut off and whatever not. Morning, everybody. How are you in India?
Good, good. Yourself?
Yeah. All good, all good. Just basically, literally going into the office and had a few calls already this morning in regards to some stuff. So joined on late. Apologies for that. Yeah, look, sacrifice is you've got to sacrifice something to basically kind of gain something. I always find that. I used to have an issue with time. So I always think I haven't got enough time to do everything and opportunities are coming, not enough time. So what I did was I started to change my mindset, sleep earlier, get up earlier in the morning and make that time availability where that's my time and my time only. And I'm not giving that to staff. I'm not giving that to anybody in the house with my family and whatever not.
Yeah. Okay. So you're right here, because I think I was asking the question in the negative way, which is,
okay, sorry.
yeah. So you cannot gain. This is the law of sacrifice. Please, if you want to gain something, there's absolutely no way you're gonna gain something new in your life without sacrificing what you already have. Either you gotta sacrifice your time with your family, or sacrifice your time or something in your life. It could be your money, it could be your relationships, it could be your time, it could be something that will allow you to, it could be your job, it could be anything, before you can gain something else. And you need to be prepared for that. Okay. Most people do not or are not prepared to lose something to gain something new. Okay. If let's say you're looking to scale your business, what are you prepared to lose? You need to be aware and prepared for that. Okay. Are you prepared to lose your job? Are you prepared to cut out on the hours that you're working on something else? Maybe there's another business that you have, maybe cut out hours from that and take those hours and put it into a new business, and that business takes off. You must be prepared to lose something before you can gain something new. Okay. It's very, very important to understand and be aware of that to be able to scale on to the new business.
It's also breaking out your comfort zones, I find.
It is
Comfort,
definitely,
yeah,
massively.
When you're comfortable with your regular salary coming in, you may not want to turn around and venture out and do a business. When you've got one business which is giving you a nice salary every month and a good dividend every year, you may not want to do the second business.
Yeah, that's true.
Comfort zones.
It is. Now, to the next one is the law of candor. Okay. Now, candor is very, very important. If any of you has had some real on ground sales experience, and you're, let's say, speaking with a potential prospect, and you give them something negative about your product or service, and you do it in a strategic way, what you're going to find is, if you've done a good job with your sales pitch, okay, if you give them a negative about your company, they will give you a positive about your own company. Okay. It's called the law of candor. That means you are being upfront with them and telling them something negative about your product or service. And then because you've done a good job with your sales pitch, they now know the difference between the negatives and the positives. You give them a negative about your company, while they give you a positive about your company back to you. Raise your hand if you know what I mean and have tried this. I've tried this many, many times. I tell people something negative about my own company, about my own product or service. But before that, I've given them enough positives. And then they come back and tell me that, okay, this is how you are different from the competition. And that now they're giving it back to me of what's positive about my own product or service. If you haven't tested this, try it out. First of all, explain all the benefits of your product or service, and then tell them something that's negative that you do not cover, or something that it does not, it's not your strength. And if you've done a good job initially by telling them all the benefits that you bring on the table, that they now should give you back what you are giving them in the first place. Raise your hand if anyone has tried this even by 500,000 miles away.
Never. I'm trying this week. I'm definitely going to give
I
that a go
promise
this week.
you this works really well, because
Um,
once they give you something positive about your own company, they are now buying into your product themselves. Does that make sense?
I like it.
It's very, very
it's
important to
part of
understand
reverse,
this. But it's the law
reverse
of candor.
psychology.
It is, it is. And it is the law of candor, because you're being upfront and straightforward with them. They're going to give you something positive about your own company, and they're almost buying into your product or service themselves. Very, very important to use this. I do it all the time. I don't know how some people do, but I pretty much do it all the time. They say candor is disarming. So basically, you're disarming the prospect. In fact, they're disarming themselves in most cases. Okay. The law of singularity. Okay. What do I mean by that? In most cases, not all, there's always exception to the rules. Okay. There's always exception to the laws. Everything that I'm sharing, there's exceptions to that, but there's always the rule, which is the law of singularity. Means always there's going to be a one big move that will literally change the direction of your business. One big move. In Apple's case, for example, it was the iPhone, the launch of the first iPhone. Pretty much everything about the company changed. I remember when I was reading about Apple and I've been observing the journey of Apple, I think when Steve Jobs joined back Apple, they were working on 200 plus products. He came in back as the CEO, and he went from 200 plus product lines to 12, only 12 product lines. Okay. Can you see how narrow he went? And from that narrow, he went and focused on one product, which was the iPhone. And that has literally changed the whole direction of the company. Okay. Something that I am personally working on as a focus of singularity, or the law of singularity, and something that you're going to observe in the next probably a year or so. But this works really, really well. And it's a matter of just focusing on one aspect of the business and then taking it all the way, allowing you to scale. Now, that this is called the law of unpredictability. Now, this is a tough one. I've tested this myself. I've tried it myself. It is really tough, but if you get it right, you will really do well with this, which is the law of unpredictability. Unless you write your competitor's marketing plan, like you write it, you can't predict the future. Now, let's say you have a competitor, okay, like a very, very strong local competitor. You need to pretty much study everything that they do, everything. I mean, if you look at, for example, Costa Coffee, their marketing campaign, last marketing campaign that I observed was, we don't waste time asking names. We make a great coffee. That was their marketing campaign, Costa Coffee. Who are they targeting? Can anyone tell me?
Starbucks.
Exactly. Their marketing has done, a marketing team has done a really good job with their research and know exactly what Starbucks is doing. So they prepared their marketing accordingly and saying, we don't waste time asking names. We make great coffee in that time space. Okay. It's called the law of unpredictability, which is really understanding the ins and outs of your marketing and structuring your marketing accordingly when you look at your competitor's marketing plan. Okay. Very, very, very important when you want to stand out and scale. This is a simple one, but it's very important. The law of success, okay, which is when people become successful, they become arrogant. Well, in again, most cases, there's a saying that nothing fails faster than success. Okay. And that's because people become arrogant. Don't be one of them. The more successful you become, the more attractive you become to people, the more humbler you need to be. And that is most charming or more attractive than anything else. I mean, I can tell you personally, the more humble I become in life, the more people I attract. The more humble I become, the more investors I attract. The more humble I become, the more deals I attract. Literally, the more humble I become, the more of what I want is what I attract. And that's the law of success. Okay. The law of failure. Failure is to be expected and accepted. Okay. Those who are scared of making mistakes, if you observe, they don't go too far. Okay. Like if you look at any entrepreneur's journey, those who are scared of making large or major decisions in their life, in their business, they don't tend to go too far. Okay. They don't build multi-million pound businesses. It's because they're scared of failure. Failure in life and business is to be expected and accepted, and that will allow you to scale much, much faster. Okay. You got to test things, you got to try things. And if you don't do that, you're just not going to be able to accelerate your journey as fast as you need to in the first place. There's something called the law of hype. Okay. If you look at media, in most cases, again, not all, this is an except, there's, we're not looking at exception of the rules, we're looking at the rules itself. The law of hype, which is when you look at media and press and what you see in the marketing material, the situation in most cases is normally the opposite. So if you look at anything that's really, really like famous, like Bitcoin and Ethereum and all of that at the moment, they're eventually going to suffer massively because media is taking them and creating a hype around it. Situation in most cases normally the opposite. So don't fall for that hype. That's the law of hype. This is very important. The law of acceleration, which is successful programs or product lines are not built on fads, but they're built on trends. Now, what do I mean by that? Follow trends. Very, very important. Again, I come across a lot of entrepreneurs who don't follow trends. Okay. If let's say you're working on a product or service and its profits are diminishing or, kind of going in that direction where it's less profits, more expenses to sustain the product line, you need to look at trends and not fads. Okay. There's a massive difference between fads and trends. You need to look out for trends and follow them, and then be able to structure your product line accordingly, which is very, very important. Okay. I think in property business, the trend is now smart homes. You walk into a home, smart electricity, smart gas, smart heating, smart cameras, and be able to track pretty much everything from anywhere. All of this is becoming really, really smart. You walk into a room, you don't need to press any button, the light comes on. You walk into a room, you play music, it's all automated. These things are a trend and not a fad anymore, that you need to be aware when you're doing your developments, and that you do your renovation accordingly, because that will help you massively stand out. Okay, so that this is how it applies to property business. Now, this is very, very important. In fact, this is the most important law that I've learned and that I'm applying massively into my business, in our business, which is the law of resources. Okay. Without funding, an idea just will not take off. Okay. Like no business will ever massively take off without a decent investment. You need money to take off your idea. You need money to stay in the mind of the consumer. You need money to be able to exploit the idea or stronger execution. Without money, you're just not going to go too far. So make sure that you have investors around you. Watch the previous videos where we are showing you how to be able to attract more investors, how to be able to raise more funds. We've covered that in the previous sessions, but just be aware that no business ever takes off without decent funding. Now, these are about 22 laws that I just shared with you. I'm actually going to share the notes of these with you so you can spend some time on this. Anyone has any questions on what I've just shared with you on all these laws? Like I said, I'll share the notes with you in the WhatsApp group so you can take that and start to apply to your business. If you observe like the journey of PN and how the network has grown and how we are attracting more investors, how we're getting more deals done at the back of this, we are growing from a team of, we've grown from a team of 0 to a team of 2. And then now the target is to grow to a team of 10 in the next 14 months, 15 months that we have by the end of 2022. And all this is just creative marketing, creative strategic positioning. That's all there is to it. There's nothing very, it's not rocket science. It's just very much common sense, everything that you see around me. When I'm writing marketing content, everything that I just shared, I would normally take on one of these laws and I'd write something. I'll share something about marketing from my own story, and I'd share it in our interviews. I'd share it in the content that we share on social media. It's very important to take on all of this. It's very important to take on all of this and start to apply to your business so you could attract more investors and grow a stronger network that will allow you to scale. Okay. Seti, do you have any questions? I can see you top of the list.
No, bro, I've been literally in and out. What I took on is what I jumped on. So no, I'm good. I'm going to try that thing with you, reverse psychology thing. I thought that was quite
the law of candor. The law of candor.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm definitely going to try. I'm going to be. I'm away next weekend. I'm in Edinburgh. My cousin's 50th, but during the week, I will update the group and the family to say I tried it, and I'll definitely.
And how did it go? Yeah,
100% for sure.
Do that.
For sure.
Fantastic. Suraj is at work. Suraj, do you have any questions? You can just raise your hand or something if you can come on. Fulake, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. One question I'm wondering about is how do you differentiate the hype from the trend?
Oh,
you
yes.
Know, you said,
yes, it's not
don't
easy.
get carried away by the hype.
It's not
follow
easy.
The trend. How do you
it's balance
it? How do you know what is a hype? And
look for stats. Look for stats. Okay. Now I'll give you an example. In property business, HMOs. So if you look at property prices, right? There's a saying that property prices have grown anywhere between 15 to 30% just during COVID, right? Yep. Are you with me on this, Falake? So let's say,
yes,
I remember reading an article about a year ago where it said, if you have a property that's worth $250,000, by the time your kids are 25, so let's say a kid is born now, and by the time your kid is 25 years old, that property would be worth about £1 million in UK, depending on the location, but in and around London, it'll be worth £1 million. Okay. Now imagine, do you think my kids, okay, or your kids when they grow up, you know, when they're 25 and 30, do you think they'd be able to afford buying £1 million property? No. Okay. Unless they're getting inheritance from you and me or from their parents, they're just not going to be able to afford a property. Where do you think they're going to live? In
rented property.
In either rented, rented properties, but in shared accommodations. Shared. So what is on the upward scale trend? HMOs. Can you see that? Okay. So that's a trend. What is a fad? I just feel that eventually this rent-to-rent model is going to suffer. Okay. especially the single unit rent-to-rent business. Okay, what's happening is that if you look at a single town, and if someone has a room that's empty, they're going on Airbnb and booking.com and renting out their room. There's just going to be too much supply than demand. The businesses, the rent-to-rent businesses, which will remain are the blocks. So people who have big blocks and they're using as rent-to-rent or Airbnb, some of them, not all of them, but some of them would survive depending on the location, because to be able to run a block as a rent-to-rent is a lot more cost effective than running multiple units. Does that make sense? So to me, a rent-to-rent single unit business model eventually will fade out. Does that make sense? Now that's just my perception, that's just my opinion. Okay, to me that's a fad. It's going to wave out, and you're not going to see that business in the next, I would say, maybe 3-4 years, maybe 5 max. Okay, so to differentiate between a fad and a trend, you need to really look at the stats. Okay, be more objective about differentiation rather than subjective. Does that make sense? Okay, any more questions?
That makes sense, thank you. No, that's it, thank you.
Okay, good. I always say, never ever assume anything. Okay, when you start doing developments, when you start doing BRRs, and if you're already doing them, I promise you, if you assume the smallest of the thing, it's going to come and bite you back. Okay, we literally, like the developments that I've done in my life, I can assure you, every time if anything is overlooked, it comes to bite you back. Anytime you assume something, it comes to bite you back, and you always think, shit, why the hell did I not think of that? Okay, so almost never ever assume anything. You always got to look at everything as in, like, literally you looked at it and then you got to come back and look at it again and say, did I overlook anything? Did I assume anything? Because if you do, it will literally come and bite you back. And this is purely coming from our own experience. Okay, you have to be very, very objective when you're working on your business. That's very, very important. Chetan, I can see you top of the list there. Do you have any questions? Not sure if you can hear me.
No, Jack. Thank you very much. I have no questions. Thank you.
Chetan, if you look at this session, if you watch this session and you take some of the notes and you start to implement this into your marketing material, it will help you massively.
Yes, Jack.
I'll give you an example. Okay.
Yeah.
You go and write, you don't write the name, but let's say an accountancy practice is doing something, some sort of marketing, and you take that marketing line that they're using and saying, well, they're doing this, but this is how we are doing it. Does that make sense?
Yes, Jack.
Okay. And all of a sudden, people are nosy. We are, as human beings, we are nosy by nature. Okay. We immediately pick on that marketing piece. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thank you.
You need to, and this is only one. There's 22 pieces that I shared with you. You need to work on one of them. It's like you're working on each of them slowly over a period of time. Okay.
Yes, Jack. Thank you very much, Jack. Thanks a lot.
Suraj, can you hear me? Do you have any questions? He might be at
No,
work.
Jack, I'm all right. Thank you.
Fantastic. Sapphire, do you have any questions?
No, Jack. No, Jack. Thanks.
How many of these are you applying on your business, Sapphire?
Sorry?
How many of the ones that I shared have you been applying in your business, and which ones do you think you could potentially apply in the near future?
Oh gosh, that honestly, my mind is distracted, so I haven't really. I've been in and out of listening.
That's okay. I will share with you notes. Just have a look at them. Okay. Jennifer, do you have any questions?
No questions, Jack.
Okay. How many do you think, Jennifer, or how much of the content that I shared with you have you been applying, and how much have you not been applying, do you think?
There's quite a bit I haven't applied.
Okay. Okay. All
There's
right. Okay. I'm
quite-
going to share the
quite a
notes
bit.
so you can look at it. Okay.
Yeah, I
Geeta,
appreciate the fact
yeah.
that there's notes. Yeah.
Geeta, do you have any questions?
No, Jack, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Again, the question goes back to you, Geeta, that how much of what I just shared with you have you been applying?
I think I'm working on that, Jack. But of course, having to be very different and uniquely doing the marketing, it's very
easy.
much you have to get the basics right first.
Yeah, to get the
And
basics
when
right first.
actually, and try to scale up that way. And if things don't go your way, then you try to kind of go in a different way as well.
Okay, I'll share the notes with you so you can work on them. No problem. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Emmanuel, do you have any questions? Not sure if you can hear me. I know he was at work. Tommy, do you have any questions?
No, Jack, I was not listening. I was not concentrating fully.
That's okay. I will share the notes with you. I'm actually gonna book. I'm actually gonna go back to the group after this session today, and I'm gonna book a shadow day with everyone so you can all come and see me, spend time with me. I promise you, you will learn so much. It's like you will literally take home so much and start to apply in your business. So I'm actually gonna book a shadow day very, very soon. Just bear with me on that. But this is today's session. I'm gonna stop the recording.